not really trying to tell people how they should vote on this. It's complicated. I get it. I understand completely why a lot of cannabis activists are going to be voting no on this. At the same time, I can understand why people are not so concerned with all the details. They just want to be able to buy some cannabis at a store and not see 5,000 people arrested every year for it. It's a tough choice. I encourage your viewers to do their own research. There's some TV debates online that you can watch with the proponents and opponents of this. And important things to get out and vote. And definitely vote no on Amendment 2, because that's a very bad piece of legislation.
Is the show for me and you, the one you love to listen to, and ooh, you got your friends, see it through. See, 'cause laughter is medicine too.
Hey everyone, I'm Wendy Love Edge, and this is The Edge Show. I'm going solo today, and I want to remind you that the opinions expressed by our guest may not be those of Edge Productions. This is Season 7, Episode 18, Will Plant Medicine Win the Election? Well, I'm really delighted to be back here in Arkansas. After spending a little over 5 months in Massachusetts, it was really nice to be in a state that has full cannabis legalization. In fact, right after I got there, friends gifted me cannabis to make sure I had medicine right away. And it was really exciting to see how many people are growing cannabis for all different reasons. Some people who I didn't even expect, they're growing not just for themselves, but for family members or friends, or just because they enjoy growing. Grow rights are human rights. I've been saying that for a long time, and it's just really nice to see that playing out in the state of Massachusetts. Unfortunately, the initiative Issue 4 here in Arkansas does not have grow rights, but I'm really excited to present to you my interview with Ryan Denham, where we're going to talk about the pros and cons of Issue 4, as well as discuss plant medicine initiatives in other states. So there's a lot happening here in the US with this current election, as we all know. And yes, plant medicine is once again on the ballot. So without further ado, here's my interview with Ryan Denham. Joining me now is a drug policy and climate change activist from Arkansas, Ryan Denham. Welcome to The Edge Show, Ryan.
Thanks for having me on, Wendy. It's been a long time.
It has been. I was thinking back to our previous interview in Arkansas at FPTV, and it was right around the time they took Issue 7 off of the ballot here in Arkansas.
Right. So that was back in 2016. Just to kind of go down memory lane, we had medical cannabis on the ballot, and there was another competing initiative on the ballot, kind of by some dirty players, and they were able to kick us off the ballot of the Supreme Court. And it was pretty devastating because we had a really solid medical cannabis initiative where you could grow your own, and it was really activist led. So that's the last conversation we had.
Yes. And I had gotten involved a bit every time I was here in Fayetteville. I was still living in Massachusetts, but I would come and hold signs and talk to people and get signatures. It was really devastating when that happened. But just sort of an example of what can happen with special interest groups, money, when people really want something to go forward, they'll do anything, right?
Yeah, no, it was quite unfortunate. I mean, we had a really grassroots, really a true grassroots campaign. We had people, activists from all over the state, collecting the 100,000 plus signatures to make the ballot in the snow and bad weather and the extreme heat. And we made the ballot for one of the first times in Arkansas history. It was printed on the ballot, but then it was disqualified. So it was a very confusing situation. Right. And then a lot of us made the kind of painful and tough choice to actually tell the people to vote yes on the other one, the people that kicked us off. But I think that was the right call because it still created a medical cannabis system, and it started giving patients protections.
Right, that's true. And so there are good things, even though it wasn't what we wanted. And I think we're kind of in that situation again now, aren't we?
I mean, I don't know if I'd equate it to that. I mean, it's a little complicated. I mean, there's a lot of problems with Issue 4. This is Issue 4. It's on the ballot right now for full recreational cannabis use by adults 21 years or older. And I mean, I have serious concerns about many of the components of this. But at the same time, it does stop the arrest of adults to use and possess 1 ounce of cannabis. And I think last time I checked, 5,000 Arkansans were arrested last year. That's a lot of lives that are destroyed.
Absolutely. And, I know your name came up for this interview actually when I was chatting with 𝐥𝐸𝐤𝐞, who recently was running for office. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. But he's so involved in keeping people out of jail for various reasons, including cannabis. And I think that your voice is really important here. You've kind of been here with your voice from the beginning. You may not live here presently, but here in Arkansas, people are sort of confused about issue 4. When we talk about voting no on it, which has been my opinion because I want better for Arkansas.
Yep.
People are sort of scratching their heads. What do you mean vote no, Wendy? So
Right.
what are the reasons for people to not vote yes for issue 4?
Yeah, I mean, and there are a lot of them. I mean, I think one of the most important components of a potential cannabis legalization law are to allow adults to grow their own cannabis. And this does not have a homegrown, component to that. Even the medical cannabis law we tried to pass had home grow. Colorado has home grow. The one that's on the ballot, Missouri, has home grow. So there's really no excuse to not allow people to grow a few plants in their house.
Yeah, I don't
That's
understand it at all. I just came back from Massachusetts
right.
where everyone is growing. I mean, I
Right.
literally arrived there and people were like, "Here, Wendy, I'm gonna gift you some medicine,"
Right.
because their gardens, are rich and they have plenty to share with others,
Right.
which I think the plant lends itself to that. And I've been out, screaming grow rights are human rights for years now.
Yep.
So that's one of my main reasons for saying no to it.
Sure.
But
No, and I totally get it. I mean, in Colorado where I lived for many years, it had the home grow component. It worked out well. There weren't really problems with it. And there's really no excuse. I mean, the reasoning is probably simple. They want us to buy it from them,
right.
and I don't like that kind of control. So that's one of my, major problems with this legislation or initiative rather. One of the other big ones for me is it doesn't have any expungement component built in. So, expungement is where you can kind of erase your charges from a previous cannabis conviction. That's not part of this. They have various excuses why that's not part of this, but that's a major problem for me.
Yeah, I agree. There seems to be no social justice component of this
Right.
initiative, which
Right.
is so unusual for a cannabis initiative.
Well, yeah, and I mean, part of that is probably that the people behind this aren't activists. Eddie Armstrong is a former Arkansas state legislator, and I don't ever remember him advocating for cannabis when he was in the legislature. I've seen him for many years in Little Rock, and he was absent from any cannabis discussion. And now he's, part of this, Chicago cannabis organization, and they didn't work with the local activists that have been working on this for decades. So that explains a lot of the missing components of this piece of legislation, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a mistake, but I've seen that consistently in the program here in Arkansas. Our activists are sort of pushed aside for the medical program as well.
Right.
So it kind of leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, some other problems I have, this is really, I'm concerned about the cap on the dispensaries. If I understand correctly, there's only 120 dispensaries allowed under this. And I mean, what's going to happen in 10 or 20 years? Are they going to be able to supply the market, with enough cannabis?
Right.
A lot of states don't have caps. Colorado didn't have caps. This new Missouri law doesn't have caps. And I think that's a major problem. I don't know if I'd call it a monopoly because monopoly is more like one or two companies. I mean, this could be, dozens of companies, but
Sure.
it still limits the control to too few people. And that concerns me a lot. Actually, under this proposal, under issue 4, one person can own up to 18 different dispensaries.
Wow.
And I think that's, a little high.
That's a lot. When they're putting a cap like they are, that's a lot. Yeah.
A lot of localities like Denver would have a cap, and then they'd like expand it if needed, but the original law didn't have, caps, like hard caps.
Right.
And that kind of brings me to the other points. And I think there's some confusion. A lot of people are like, let's pass this and we'll make it better later. And that kind of makes sense. Yeah, you can change the law later, right? Well, you can, but you legally can, but it's really not feasible, especially because this is a constitutional amendment. This isn't an initiated act. It's not a state statute, right? Initiated acts or state statutes, you can pass easier with another petition, or you can pass it as a bill in the legislature. But this is a constitutional amendment, and I don't have the number offhand, but there haven't been many constitutional amendments changed in Arkansas in the entire history of the state.
Sure.
So it would be very expensive. There may not be a public appetite to change it later, to have people sign petitions again, to have the volunteers get the signatures again, and people may not want to change a law that's already in effect. So to say that we can just change it later and make it better is not very realistic.
Yeah, I read a little bit about that, and that really concerns me as well. It kind of takes the voice away from the people, unfortunately.
Right. And I mean, there is some benefit in making a constitutional amendment that prevents the legislature from changing it for the worse later. We would probably support our own constitutional amendments, but in this case, the law is very flawed. So that's a point of concern that it's, really locked in the Constitution.
Right. Right, I understand. So what are, to be clear, what are the pro points for voting yes on issue 4?
And I still have other con points to cover, but yeah, let's go.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Yeah, maybe we should just finish that first. So I think this could make the medical program worse. In some cases, patients have to drive hours already to get their medicine. But I'm worried that this new market won't be able to support quality cannabis for the number of people that are going to be purchasing it. Some people are estimating 300,000 Arkansans are going to be consumers. They underestimated how many medical patients originally were going to happen or be part of medical patients. I think there's like 90,000 medical patients right now, so they underestimated that at the beginning. But I'm worried the quality is not going to be great, and it's just going to be the supply may be limited, and it may be difficult to keep up with demand, and that could drive prices higher. So, I'm concerned about that the medical patients are going to kind of suffer under this proposal.
Yeah, frequently that does frequently happen in states when they pass full legalization. The patients kind of get left behind.
Right.
So it's not really that surprising, but it's still very unfortunate.
Right. And, when I worked on issue 7, we met so many low-income people that needed medical cannabis. And, it just kind of breaks your heart that some of these people won't even be able to afford to buy the medicine.
Right.
And that was the impetus to have the home grow. Then maybe you could grow your own cannabis, and be able to, offset that cost.
Yes.
A few other reasons I have concerns about this is it repeals the residency requirement. So previously, there was a component where I forget the percentage, but you had to have a certain percentage of the owners of the dispensary to be Arkansas residents. So this basically repeals that. So you could have a lot of out-of-state interests coming in. Eddie Armstrong has this huge Chicago connection where his group is based. So that worries me a little bit. I'd rather have, Arkansans, be primarily the owners of this industry.
For sure.
The Alcohol Bureau Control, the ABC, is regulating this program, and those people are appointed by the governor. So, that gives me a little concern.
Yeah, a deep sigh. Yes.
Only 1 ounce of cannabis is allowed, and I think that's a little too low. I would rather see 2, 3, 4 ounces at least, right, of possession. It's possible that this may impact the CBD industry. It's a little unclear how this could play out, but some people have really raised concerns that this could eliminate CBD growers that are already set up in Arkansas under the Department of Agriculture. And it's a little fuzzy how that's going to play out, but that has a point of concern.
Yeah, that would be a shame. I think frequently, especially when full legalization comes in, people kind of forget about CBD, but CBD is really essential to health in many, many ways for many people. So that would really be a shame.
Absolutely. Another point of concern for me is there's no employee protection. So what I mean by that is an employee in Arkansas could get fired for using cannabis still. If they fail a drug test, they could get fired. And I think that's a mistake. Other states have kind of started to use that language in new initiatives. I don't think it was included in Colorado's original one, but it was added later by the governor. But if it's legal to buy in Arkansas, you shouldn't be allowed to be fired from your job. That's kind of crazy,
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Yeah.
And then the taxing, a lot of the taxes go to law enforcement. I'm not a big fan of that. and drug courts. And drug courts are kind of an abysmal failure, in my opinion. I mean, drug courts are kind of framed as this way to keep people out of jail. But many times people would rather go to jail than be part of a drug court because it's so restrictive on your life. And it's just really disruptive to live a normal life and be in drug court. So I don't like how the money goes to drug courts and law enforcement. Some of the money does go to cancer research, and that's a good thing. And then maybe lastly, there's no local zoning control. So cities can't kind of craft their own local zoning to a certain degree under this.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Yeah, there's been a lot of advertising about money going into law enforcement here in Arkansas. I didn't notice it before I left for Massachusetts, but when I came back, it was, just sort of glaring in my face anytime I turned on the TV at all.
Right, right.
And I think they think that that's a positive point for citizens. But let's not forget all the arrests and all the people who are still imprisoned for cannabis.
Right, sure. And yeah, maybe this is a good segue into the kind of the pro, and there's fewer pro points for me on this, but it still is a tough choice, I'll be honest with you. And as an activist, it is kind of hard for me to vote no on cannabis legalization, even though it's such a bad law.
Right.
So some of these points are, well, firstly, Chris Jones, the Democratic candidate for governor, he does support this. He's endorsed it. The Arkansas Libertarian governor candidate has endorsed this, so that's maybe worth mentioning. There is a movement to get as many states to legalize marijuana as possible right now. And I think if all 5 of these ballot initiatives pass, I think it's 20 states that are going to legalize cannabis. And that's important because kind of the end game is to legalize marijuana, cannabis on a federal level, to deschedule it, hopefully, and not reschedule it.
Right.
So by adding Arkansas to that list, and by Arkansas being one of the first southern states to legalize cannabis, that is very, important. And that packs
Sure.
that really is going to make a lot of waves and help other states, support other states to move in that direction also. And that's why, National Normal, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, supports issue 4, even though the local Normal does not in Little Rock, or the Arkansas Normal does not support it. So that's kind of an interesting kind of disagreement.
That is an interesting one. Wow.
That's usually kind of the position of most of these national organizations, like the Drug Policy Alliance, the Marijuana Policy Project, MPP. They usually are going to say vote yes on any kind of incremental change, even if there are some bad parts to it. And that's my only kind of hesitation, is that 5,000 people roughly were arrested for cannabis use in Arkansas last year. And you have to understand that, sometimes people will say, oh, well, they didn't get sentenced to jail, but it doesn't matter. When you have that on your record, especially if you're a low-income person, and you have to pay thousands of dollars in fines, you could lose your job, you could have your child taken away, you could lose your federal student aid. There's a lot of things that could happen.
Oh yeah, housing, all of it.
And so, like, if we can stop that right now, if we can stop 5,000 people being arrested next year by adults for using small amounts of cannabis, that's my only kind of hesitation,
Right. That's understandable. I've been saying vote no, as I mentioned, and
right.
But it was a very hard decision because some of the points that you raise were points that I thought about as well, and I wonder if we would even get a better initiative here in Arkansas based on the history, which we discussed.
Right.
So maybe this is it. I don't know.
Well, and that's part of my concern also. That's maybe the last pro point that I have. Is, like Melissa Fultz, who's a good friend of mine. She was the co-director and campaign director for the other medical cannabis initiatives. I worked with her. We were, team members in the medical campaigns. She's staunchly opposed to this. And, she says, well, we're going to vote no on this and we'll pass another one in 2 or 4 years. And so my only hesitation is, like, are we really going to allow 10,000 or 15,000 more people to be arrested for cannabis by that point? The other problem is,
I feel that in my heart. Yeah.
It's not easy to pass these laws, and you can make very small mistakes sometimes and get kicked off the ballot. It's very expensive. It's very labor intensive to get the signatures. And there's no guarantee that we will be voting in 2 years on a better one or 4 years on a better one. If they make a mistake, hell, it could be 8 years,
Right.
But maybe not. It's just, and it's a risk. It's really a risk that when you're deciding how to vote on this. The other concern I have is Amendment 2. I don't know if you're familiar with Amendment 2 that's on the ballot statewide.
I am.
Yeah. So this is going to make, for those who are not familiar, this is going to make initiated acts and constitutional amendments require a super majority of votes to pass. So 60% instead of 50%. And when you think about the medical law that passed in 2016, that would have failed. I don't remember the number on it, but it was less than 60%.
Right.
So if Amendment 2 passes, and I haven't seen the polling, it'll be difficult to pass another cannabis law later.
Right. Right. And so we have to take all of these things into consideration. I think if people are informed and understand all of the pros and cons, they can make an informed decision. And I guess we'll see what happens. But let's turn to some better news, because the initiative in Missouri is much better, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I currently live in southwestern Missouri, and so these are really activists. These are true activists that put this on the ballot. These are the same folks who put medical cannabis on the ballot. I know a lot of them are great people, and they've worked really hard to get this on the ballot. It's issue 3. It's in Missouri. It's going to fully legalize recreational use of cannabis by adults. It has I think 3 ounces you can possess. It has a home grow. We can grow up to 18 non-flowering plants, maybe 6 flowering, I believe. It does have expungement built in, and it has no caps on the number of dispensaries. So overall, just much better initiative. But even here, I'm surprised I still run into a lot of cannabis folks that are against it, and it really kind of surprises me that
really,
it's some people are accusing it, this initiative of being a monopoly and the big, really corporate controlled, and I really couldn't disagree more. I think it's a pretty solid piece of legislation from activists, not from these big corporate entities out of state. Right. And pretty sure it's going to pass. I hope it's going to pass. I'll be voting yes on that. And hopefully that's
I'm surprised, because it seems to have all the components that as an activist we look for.
Right. It even makes the medical.
You can't always please everyone, right?
No, you're right. You're right. It even makes the medical program better there. It allows nurse practitioners to make the medical certifications. It changes the medical card time length from 1 year to 3 years.
Nice.
So it really has a lot of great components in that law. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Wonderful. And as we were starting, you informed me about an initiative in Colorado that sounds great as well.
Yes. So, I used to live in Colorado, and I'm pretty excited that I think it's Proposition 122. So this is a statewide piece of legislation to legalize psychedelics for therapeutic use.
Wonderful.
And this would actually have healing centers where you'd be able to purchase psychedelics, including psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, other natural-based psychedelics, and get therapy for that. I don't know all the details on that, but overall, it sounds like a great step forward in ending the war on drugs and allowing people to use the healing properties of psychedelics, which are a great thing. And I would love to see Arkansas do that too. I'd love to see, Fayetteville or Eureka Springs or, the whole state of Arkansas move in that direction later as well.
Yeah, you were involved in the lowest priority for cannabis here in Arkansas, or in Fayetteville and Eureka, I believe, correct? I would love to see them do that with psilocybin or, psychedelics in general.
Right. Yeah. So we got started on campus at the University of Arkansas, founded a normal chapter in like 2002, and then started to try to pass laws. So we went to Eureka Springs in 2006 and passed to make marijuana the lowest priority for the police and the prosecutor's office. To pass, I think, with 53% of the vote, and then followed that up in Fayetteville in 2008 and passed lowest priority also, and it passed with I believe 58% of the vote. So that was kind of like our test to see if Arkansas was ready to start chipping away at our draconian drug laws. And we were pretty excited. And so the next step after that was to get medical passed on the state level. And, that's kind of leading up to where we are today. So
it's so great. It's a long process and requires a lot of education for citizens to really understand plant medicine and what it can do in their own hometown. And so just step by step, it has been moving in a positive direction, even if we're not completely thrilled with the initiative that's presently on the table here in Arkansas.
Right, right. So yeah, just kind of in closing, I'm not really trying to tell people how they should vote on this. It's complicated. I get it. I understand completely why a lot of cannabis activists are going to be voting no on this. At the same time, I can understand why people are not so concerned with all the details. They just want to be able to buy some cannabis at a store and not see 5,000 people arrested every year for it. It's a tough choice. I encourage your viewers to do their own research. There's some TV debates online that you can watch with the proponents and opponents of this. And important things to get out and vote. And definitely vote no on Amendment 2, because that's a very bad piece of legislation.
Well, thanks so much for joining me. Let's hope that plant medicine wins the election this time and we see some forward movement.
Yeah, so nice to speak to you, Wendy. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, take care.
All right, good to see you.
I'm Dr. Brian Nichol, your cannabis expert for CannabisExpertMD.com with a cannabis pairing for the Edge Show. This week, per Mr. Producer Sam, he's decided to go with a cannabis and soda pairing. What'd you pick this week, Mr. Producer?
We picked strawberry Fanta.
Strawberry Fanta. Well, an old guy like me, my beverage of choice is a generic seltzer and all that. When I was a kid, it was Strawberry Crush. I used to drink it on the Andy Griffith Show quite a bit.
Well, it's Fanta now.
Well, I guess they do have those attractive Fanta girls advertising things these days.
They're the Fantanas.
They got a name. They're called the Fantanas. Well,
The
sure they
Fantanas,
do.
yeah.
Of course, they got to be the Fantanas. Well, Sam, I picked based on the cannabinoid terpene profiles available to me, as I always do. Natural state medicinal strawberry diesel. It's supposed to have a strawberry taste. Should go pretty well with the strawberry soda, I guess. It is potent at 18% THC. How much CBD there, Mr. Producer?
Trace.
Oh, you got it right again. Looking at the terpenes as we always do to flesh out the headspace it's going to put you in. It's pretty potent at 1.35 total percentage terpenes. Beta-caryophyllene is up next at 0.68%, being quite dominant in that. Limonene shows at 0.22%. Humuline's tied right about 0.19. We've got a little showing of linalool at 0.09. Myrcene's tied right about 0.08 there. And just a hint of pinene, enough to count at 0.06%. Now, I should get a quick cerebral effect as the myrcene speeds up the THC effects. A lot of beta-caryophyllene in there. That's going to combine with the limonene. Should really give a kind of a chill relaxation to things, help with any anxiety and depression symptoms you might be having. Give you a little bit of a mood lift, too. The humuline, now that's going to chase off the munchies a little bit. A little bit of linalool, well combined with the other terpenes to give even more relaxation. And that little bit of pinene, it may help with remembering where you left your beverage a short time ago. So, strawberry diesel, it's supposed to have a strawberry flavor. Should be a good mix with the Fanta beverage and the Fantanas, I guess they're called, Sam.
That is correct.
And the Fantanas. For more information on all things medical cannabis, be sure to check us out at CannabisExpertMD.com. We're also available on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Cannabis Expert MD.
Oh, it's always great to hear from Dr. Nichol and pairing cannabis with the Fantanas and Fanta soda. Well, soda's not so healthy, right? But sometimes we want something sweet and delicious, and I'm sure strawberry Fanta is just that. So I hope you found my interview with Ryan Denham to be as informative as I did. And this is your chance to make some decisions. If you live in Arkansas, the decision is not an easy one. So it's good to have all of the information and make an informed decision. And I hope that we accomplish that for you today. Let's hope that the initiatives pass in Missouri and in Colorado, and that plant medicine wins the election once again. Have a great week, everyone. Bye. The Ed Show is sponsored in part by 131 Inclusion Gallery, Lindsay Camp with Synergy One Lending,